I was working at the front desk of a boutique hotel in Tokyo when a guest marched up holding a wet umbrella like a weapon. He was vibrating with a strange, frantic energy because he couldn't find a single trash can on the street. "I realize what's happening," he whispered loudly. "The Japanese government hides the bins to test our psychological resilience for space travel." I explained that we simply carry our rubbish home to maintain public cleanliness and order. He scoffed, claiming he'd seen a documentary about secret underground garbage chutes, reserved for high-ranking citizens, and requested a map of the tunnels. He eventually stuffed his dripping wrapper into a decorative vase, convinced he'd successfully passed a hidden social experiment. My cousin manages a quiet library in Oslo where a visitor started shouting into his phone about his recent hiking trip. When patrons shushed him, he stood up and announced that silence in Norway was a myth created to lure introverted tourists into a trap. "I know the Vikings used high-decibel war cries to communicate across fjords," he argued with total confidence. He insisted that by being loud, he was actually honoring the indigenous heritage of the region. He refused to lower his voice, claiming that whispering was a sign of submission to the New World silence. Order. He was eventually escorted out while screaming about his constitutional right to be heard by the neighboring mountains. I'm a guide at a mountain monastery in Bhutan, where a tourist tried to pay for a meditation session with a bag of shiny rocks. He claimed that because the country measures gross national happiness, the local currency was actually based on positive vibrations and earth energy. I told him we used the Inultrum and that his pebbles were just landscaping gravel from the parking lot. He doubled down, insisting that the rocks were charged by his crystals and were worth more than gold in high-altitude zones. "You guys are just playing hard to get to keep the vibration market high," he said. He left the rocks on the altar, expecting a spiritual receipt for his investment. My brother works the ticket counter at a train station in Zurich, and dealt with a man who was furious the train left on time. The man claimed that Swiss timing was actually a sophisticated hologram designed to make foreigners feel rushed and inefficient. In the real world, physics dictates that a 3-minute boarding window is a mathematical impossibility, shouted at the platform. He argued that the clocks were sped up by the government to increase the National Productivity Index. When shown his watch was just behind, he accused the station of using electromagnetic pulses to manipulate his hardware. He missed 3 more trains while trying to calibrate his perception of reality. My uncle owns a date farm in Oman and hosted a traveler who refused to eat the fruit because it wasn't digitally verified. He believed that every date in the Middle East contained a microchip for tracking international sugar consumption patterns. I read on a forum that the pits are actually antennas for the regional satellite grid, he stated with absolute certainty. He spent an hour trying to scan a piece of fruit with a QR reader on his phone. When the dates didn't beep, he claimed they were stealth models designed to bypass his firewall. He eventually left, starving but proud that he hadn't been hacked by a piece of produce. I was working the information booth in Singapore when a man tried to bribe me with a pack of fruit-flavored gum to skip a line. He claimed that because gum is restricted, it had become the primary black market currency for the city's elite. "I know the secret handshake. Just take the spearmint and let me through the VIP gate," he whispered. I told him there was no VIP gate and that gum wasn't a legal tender. He insisted that the Great Mint Accord of the 90s made sugar-free pellets more valuable than the local dollar. He ended up hiding the pack in a potted plant, fearing he'd be tracked by chewing detection drones. My father runs a traditional tea house in Marrakech and met a man who refused to sit on the floor cushions. The visitor claimed that Moroccan floor seating was a clever tactical maneuver to keep tourists at a disadvantage during negotiations. "If I'm lower than you, my carotid artery is exposed to the local energy field," he explained. He insisted on standing while drinking his tea, claiming that vertical alignment was the only way to prevent his thoughts from being read. He argued that the rug patterns were actually complex binary codes designed to scramble his GPS data. He eventually spilled hot tea on his shoes while trying to maintain his defensive stance. My friend is a lifeguard at a public sauna in Helsinki and saw a guest trying to wear a full wetsuit inside the heat. The man argued that Finnish saunas were actually low-gravity simulation chambers for the European Space Agency. "The heat is just a cover for the atmospheric pressure changes," he told the other confused, naked patrons. He claimed that exposing skin would result in molecular thinning due to the extreme Nordic climate. When asked to remove the rubber suit for safety, he accused us of trying to steal his biosignature. He spent 10 minutes sweating profusely before declaring he had completed his orbital training for the day. "I'm a server at a late-night bistro in Santiago, where a visitor arrived at 5 p.m. and demanded dinner immediately. When I explained we don't serve dinner until 9, he claimed the clocks in Chile were part of a massive productivity prank. I know the sun is actually a giant lamp controlled by the mining companies to trick us," he shouted. He insisted that eating before dark was a revolutionary act against the nocturnal regime. Sat at an empty table for 4 hours, claiming he was protesting the temporal hierarchy. He eventually fell asleep before the kitchen even opened, convinced he'd won a moral victory. My cousin is a monk's assistant in Luang, Prabang, and saw a tourist trying to join the morning alms procession with a megaphone. The man claimed that the silent ritual was inefficient marketing for the local spiritual community. "You need a hype man to tell people how much merit they're getting for the sticky rice," he told the head monk. He argued that ancient scriptures actually encourage boisterous proclamation, but the translation had been suppressed by quiet mode lobbyists. He tried to start a merit-based chant that sounded like a sports rally. He was politely asked to leave after trying to give the monks fives instead of food. "I was working at the cloakroom of the Széchenyi baths in Budapest when a man demanded a waterproof safe for his ego." He claimed that the high mineral content in the Hungarian springs was actually liquid memory storage. "If I soak too long, the water will overwrite my personality with the history of the Austro-Hungarian Empire," he explained. He insisted on wearing a tinfoil-lined swimming cap to protect his intellectual property. He argued that the government was harvesting thoughts from the steam to fuel a national poetry database. He spent the entire time in the cold plunge, believing low temperatures would lock his brain. My brother manages a milk bar in Warsaw and met a customer who refused to use the self-service system. The man claimed that getting his own tray was a violation of the National Hospitality Charter of 1952. "I'm a guest of the state, and the state must provide a designated tray bearer," he announced to the line. He insisted that self-service was a psychological operation to prepare the population for a robotic takeover. He stood at the counter for 20 minutes, waiting for a diplomatic server to move his soup. He eventually carried the tray using only his pinky fingers to maintain his aristocratic dignity. My uncle operates a eagle hunting camp in Mongolia, where a guest tried to interview a golden eagle with a clip-on microphone. He claimed that the birds were actually biological drones used by the nomadic tribes to monitor global satellite traffic. "These feathers are sophisticated antennas. I can hear the hum of the internet," he told the bewildered hunters. He insisted that the eagle's screech was a coded transmission regarding the price of copper. When the eagle bit his glove, he claimed it was an encrypted physical handshake intended for his eyes only. He spent the night writing a field report on AVN cyber intelligence. "I'm a clerk at a convenience store in Taipei, and a tourist tried to pay for a soda using loyalty points from an American pharmacy." He claimed that the global supply chain made all points-based systems interchangeable under the Universal Reward Treaty. "My CVS Extra Bucks are valid in any territory that exports plastic," he stated with total authority. I told him we only take cash or local cards, but he accused me of devaluing his digital assets. He argued that refusing his points was a direct attack on the stability of the global economy. He left the soda on the counter, declaring he would report me to the retail senate. My sister works at a wildlife conservancy in Namibia and met a guest who tried to negotiate with a rhinoceros. He believed that the rhino's horn was a natural tuning fork that responded to specific vocal frequencies. "I've mastered the low-frequency rumble that signifies I'm a high-ranking diplomat from the West," told the rangers. He walked toward the animal while making a strange buzzing sound with his lips, claiming it was a peace frequency. When the rhino snorted, he interpreted it as a formal invitation to discuss land rights. He had to be physically pulled back into the jeep while shouting about interspecies diplomacy. I'm a waiter at a traditional mezz restaurant in Amman, where a customer tried to return a plate of hummus. He claimed it was pre-chewed because it didn't have the texture of the chunky dip he bought at home. I know the kitchen is trying to save on labor by using industrial blenders to simulate digestion, he argued. I explained that smooth hummus is the standard of quality here, but he insisted it was a culinary shortcut. He demanded to see the bean-crushing records to ensure the chickpeas were manually smashed. He ended up eating a bowl of whole, dry chickpeas to remain in control of the process my cousin drives. A food truck in La Paz and a tourist tried to buy us using a digital certificate of authenticity. He believed that, because Bolivia's high altitude, the food required a pressure-sealed warranty to be safe for consumption. The air is too thin for standard baking. This must be a laboratory-grown pastry, he told the crowd. He insisted that the juice inside the pastry was actually liquid oxygen meant to prevent altitude sickness. He refused to eat it until he'd checked the atmospheric seal with the tire pressure gauge. He finally took a bite and claimed he could feel his red blood cells multiplying. My brother is a barista in Tbilisi, and a guest tried to order a deconstructed kakapori, where the cheese and bread were served in separate rooms. The man claimed that mixing dairy and gluten in the same airspace caused a molecular conflict that ruined the flavor profile. I need the cheese to be in a neutral environment to reach its peak potential, he explained. He insisted that the egg on top was a geopolitical metaphor for the Caucasus that he wasn't ready to digest. He spent an hour moving the bread further away from the cheese, claiming he was conducting a flavor resonance study. He eventually ate neither. I'm a floor manager at a barbecue house in Seoul, and a tourist tried to sue the table for having a hole in the middle. He claimed the built-in grill was a safety hazard designed to trap the heat of the sun. I know the government uses these tables to monitor our thermal signatures, he shouted at the staff. He insisted on covering the grill with his jacket to block the infrared sensors. When the jacket started to smoke, he claimed it was sabotage by the heating element. He demanded a table in the parking lot, arguing that open-air dining was the only way to avoid the fire pit surveillance. My uncle runs a small cafe in Tashkent, and a visitor refused to drink the tea because it didn't have a security seal on the pot. The man argued that unsealed tea was a medium for regional thought control additives. Read that the Silk Road was actually built to distribute mind-altering herbs in ceramic vessels, he told the regulars. He insisted on boiling his own water using a portable battery pack and a metal spoon. He claimed that the local tea leaves were biologically engineered to make him more suggestible to rug sales. He sat in the corner, drinking plain hot water, looking suspicious of every teapot. My brother is a chef in Lisbon, and a guest tried to send back a plate of grilled sardines because they had too many eyes. The man claimed that the fish were looking at him to collect data for the Portuguese Fishing Union. No, these are aquatic drones designed to track the consumption habits of high-net-worth individuals, he stated. He insisted that the scales were actually solar panels meant to power the fish's internal recording devices. He demanded the fish be served in witness protection masks made of lemon slices. He eventually ate a bag of chips, claiming they were digitally silent and therefore safe. I'm a server at a cafe in Wellington, where a tourist tried to tip me with a handful of seashells he found on the beach. He claimed that the New Zealand dollar was secretly pegged to the calcium carbonate index of the Pacific Ocean. These shells are high-yield assets in the upcoming blue economy, he told me with a wink. When I asked for actual money, he accused me of being out of touch with the future of decentralized currency.
Right.
Argued that the government was planning to phase out paper for biodegradable crustacean-backed notes. He left the shells on the counter and walked out like a billionaire. My cousin is a bartender on a beach in Langkawi, and a visitor tried to order a non-humid beer. The man argued that the tropical air was diluting the alcohol content through osmosis. I need my drink served inside a vacuum-sealed chamber to maintain the chemical integrity, he shouted. He insisted that the condensation on the glass was a government-led hydration project to track his sweat patterns. He tried to drink the beer through a complex series of straws he'd taped together to filter the humidity. He ended up knocking the drink over. Claiming the atmospheric pressure, it finally staged a coup against him. My brother is a host at a taverna in Crete, where a guest refused the complimentary raki at the end of the meal. He claimed that the clear spirit was actually liquid truth serum used by the villagers to extract his bank details. I've seen how the locals look at me. They want the codes to my retirement fund, he whispered to his wife. He insisted that the small glass was a biometric scanner that captured his DNA through the condensation. He poured the drink into a nearby plant, claiming he was neutralizing the local intelligence network. The plant died, and he felt his suspicions were finally validated. I'm a waiter at a restaurant in Tolan. A customer tried to pay his bill using digital credits from a video game. He claimed that since Estonia is the most digital country, all e-currencies were legally recognized as sovereign tender. My level 80 paladin has enough gold to buy this entire building, he told the manager. He insisted that the great digital migration of 2021 had rendered physical cash obsolete for advanced users. 8. The card machine declined his imaginary gold. He accused the restaurant of having a low bandwidth interface. Eventually, he had to call his mother to pay with a standard credit card. I was working the ticket booth at a ferry terminal in Istanbul when a man tried to haggle for a better time zone. He claimed that the crossing from Europe to Asia should legally grant him an extra hour of life. I'm crossing a continental tectonic plate. Physics dictates a temporal refund, he argued loudly. He insisted that the jet lag lobby was suppressing the truth about the Bosphorus time warp. He tried to pay for his ticket with a broken watch. Claiming it was preloaded with saved hours, he eventually boarded the boat. Complaining that the ferry was moving too slowly to trigger the time skip, my cousin drives a sleeper bus in Ho Chi Minh City, and a tourist tried to rent the aisle as a private yoga studio. The man argued that the concept of shared space was a relic of the past, and that he digitally claimed the floor. I've geotagged the specific square meter of the bus as my personal sanctuary, he told the other passengers. He insisted that the vibration of the engine was a natural healing frequency he needed for his spinal alignment. He refused to move his legs for people boarding, claiming they were trespassing on his sovereign vibration. He was eventually moved to the back seat. My brother is a trekking guide in Juarez. A visitor tried to refill his oxygen tank with a bicycle pump. The man claimed that the Peruvian air was too thin because the mountains were hogging all the molecules. No, the peaks have a secret agreement with the clouds too. Starve the valleys of oxygen, he told the group. He insisted that by pumping air into his lungs, he was manually overriding the altitude. He argued that Big Mountain was a corporate entity designed to sell expensive gear to unsuspecting hikers. He got lightheaded after 10 pumps and claimed the mountains. Defense system had targeted him. I'm a station master in rural Senegal, and a tourist tried to buy a train that wasn't on the schedule. He claimed that the lack of a printed timetable meant the entire rail system was an on-demand luxury service. I'm a platinum tier traveler. The train should manifest when my GPS reaches the coordinates, he shouted. He insisted that the tracks were actually magnetic rails that responded to the intent of the commuter. When no train appeared, he accused the station of having low vibrational connectivity. He spent 3 hours sitting on his suitcase, trying to manifest a locomotive with his mind. My uncle drives a taxi in Dublin, and a guest tried to correct his pronunciation of local street names using a Latin dictionary. The man claimed that Irish was actually a corrupted form of ancient Roman battle slang. You're saying Baileyman wrong? The tactical prefix implies a fortified hilltop in the Second Punic War, he explained. He insisted that the Celtic language board was a cover for a linguistic laundering scheme. He refused to pay the full fare, claiming he'd provided consultancy services for the driver's heritage. He eventually got out and started renaming the local pubs with a permanent marker. I was working the information desk at the airport in Dubai when a man asked for a sandproof passport. He claimed that the desert air was actually powdered surveillance dust designed to clog the microchips of Westerners. I know the dunes are actually massive piles of shredded documents from the 1970s, he whispered. He insisted on wrapping his ID in 3 layers of lead foil to protect his identity from the wind. He argued that the Great Sandstorm of 2018 was a deliberate attempt to erase the memories of transit passengers. He spent his layover in a plastic tent he'd built in the terminal. My brother is a mountain guide in the High Atlas, and a hiker tried to recalibrate the summit with a spirit level. The man claimed that the mountain was leaning too far to the left due to poor structural maintenance. The Moroccans haven't reinforced the base, and it's affecting my internal equilibrium, he complained. He insisted that he could feel the tectonic drift because he'd eaten a specific type of organic kale. He tried to prop up a boulder with his trekking pole to stabilize the region, eventually gave up, claiming the mountain was too stubborn to accept his help. My cousin manages a car rental in Reykjavik, and a guest tried to return a Jeep because it wasn't magical enough. The man argued that Icelandic roads were built on elf energy, and that his car was low on enchantment. Paid for the hidden folk package. But I haven't seen a single leprechaun or portal, he shouted. I told him we don't have leprechauns, but he insisted they were stealth mode employees of the tourism board. He argued that the engine's hum was actually a frustrated ghost that needed a sacrifice of premium gasoline. He demanded a refund for the lack of supernatural activity. A gate agent in Siem Reap, where a traveler tried to enter Angkor Wat with a virtual reality permit. He claimed that the physical temple was just a legacy backup for a high-definition simulation he'd already visited. I've already conquered the digital version, so the physical stones are legally my property, he told the guards. He insisted that the ancient civilization code allowed for the merger of physical and digital assets. He tried to delete a stone wall by swiping his hand in the air. When the wall didn't disappear, he accused the ruins of having a glitchy interface and demanded a tech support team. My uncle drives a boat in the canals of Venice, and a guest tried to steer the gondola with a gaming controller. The man claimed that the water was actually liquid fiber optic cable that responded to Bluetooth signals. I've played enough simulator games to know that the OR is just a decorative accessory, he told my uncle. He insisted that the Vatican's secret server controlled the tides through a central joystick in Rome. He kept clicking the X button on his controller and was furious when the boat didn't jump over a bridge. He eventually accused the gondolier of lagging his connection. I'm a ranger at a national park in Bulgaria and saw a man trying to charge his phone by sticking the cable into a hole in an oak tree. He claimed that the ancient Thracian forest was a natural power grid that provided free electricity to spiritually aligned individuals. The sap is actually liquid electrolytes. I read it on a blog about biohacking the wilderness, he told me. He insisted that the tree was discriminating against his specific brand of phone because it wasn't eco-certified. Spent an hour yelling at the bark, demanding the tree release its stored voltage. He eventually left, claiming the forest was running a proprietary OS. My cousin is a museum guard in Bucharest where a tourist tried to buy a painting with a bag of digital seeds. He claimed that the future of the art market was based on botanical tokens that would eventually grow into luxury assets. This bag of sunflower seeds is the beta version of a new global currency, he told the curator. He insisted that the Artseed initiative was a secret treaty signed by the world's major galleries. He argued that refusing his payment was a sign of cultural stagnation. He tried to plant a seed in a nearby floor crack, claiming he was investing in the building's future value. I was working at a ski resort in the Bulgarian mountains when a guest tried to report the snow for being too cold. He claimed that the resort was using industrial-grade liquid nitrogen to simulate a winter that didn't exist. I know that temperature is a psychological operation to make us buy more hot chocolate, he shouted at the lift operator. He insisted that real snow should have a room temperature core if it was truly organic. He tried to melt a snowball with a hairdryer to reveal the secret tracking device inside. He eventually gave up, claiming the conspiracy of the frost was too deep to solve. My brother works at a port in Panama, and a traveler tried to skip the canal by claiming he had maritime immunity. The man argued that his boat was a sovereign digital territory that didn't recognize the laws of physics or geography. I've registered my hull as an independent cloud server, so the water beneath me is technically mine, he told the authorities. He insisted that the Grand Canal Treaty was a fictional narrative created to collect tolls from the unawakened. He tried to bypass the lock by revving his engine and screaming permission denied at the gates. He was towed away while citing internet common law. My uncle is a guide at a base camp in Nepal where a guest tried to level up the mountain with a laser pointer. He claimed that Mount Everest was incomplete and needed visual structural adjustments to reach its true peak potential. The summit is currently unoptimized for the 21st century's aesthetic requirements, he told the Sherpas. He insisted that the Himalayan Design Committee had authorized him to mark the new boundaries with his light. He spent the night pointing his laser at the sky, claiming he was uploading the new coordinates to a satellite. He woke up with frozen fingers and a sense of cosmic accomplishment. It's truly fascinating. How some people can travel halfway around the world and still believe that their local logic is a universal law of physics. We've seen everything from digital seeds to magical jeeps, proving that the only thing more boundless than the horizon is the confidence of a confused tourist. These stories remind us that while culture might change at the border, a high disable misunderstanding is a language that everyone, unfortunately, understands. The world is a complex, beautiful place, but it's definitely not a hologram or a low-gravity simulation just because your phone doesn't have a signal. Stay curious, stay humble, and for the love of all that is holy, please stop trying to charge your phone in a tree. Would you like me to create a follow-up script? Focusing specifically on hilariously wrong historical facts tourists have tried to teach locals?